Just 5 months after taking over, Kroger's new CEO is attempting to acquire another supermarket chain. Let's just hope this one goes better than the last time. And a major LPGA golf tournament's future is in jeopardy after its two biggest sponsors pulled out. Also, just what is a kolache, and why are they coming to Cincinnati? This is Above the Fold.
Whether you're rediscovering your hometown or planning your next getaway, Cincy offers unforgettable experiences at a price that's hard to beat. Catch a game, explore world-class museums, enjoy miles of parks and trails, experience live music, or dive into one of the Midwest's most exciting food scenes. Learn more or plan your trip at visitcincy.com.
Welcome to Above the Fold, a podcast by the Cincinnati Business Courier, presented by Cincinnati Regional Tourism, where we bring you the week's top stories and interviews with newsmakers that take you behind the people and personalities in the news. I'm your host, Andy Brownfield, joined by co-host and Courier Editor-in-Chief, Tom Demeropoulos. Welcome, or should I say, welcome back, Tom.
It's great to be back, Andy. I can't believe we've been on the hiatus that we've been with this podcast, so ready to get going again.
Yeah, if you're just joining us for the first time, this is Above the Fold, the Cincinnati Business Courier's podcast, where we take you each week on a deep dive into the 5 biggest stories of the week, modeled after our daily 5 Things columns that land in readers' inboxes. And then we have a conversation with a big name in local business. If you're rejoining us, glad to have you back, Folders. We missed you. Tom, it's been nearly 3 years since we last put out episodes of Above the Fold, and in that time, I don't know about you, but I've gotten many emails from Folders, which is, as what we call our most devoted podcast listeners, asking when it's coming back.
Yes, I've had the same thing, Andy. I have a few super fans who come back on a regular basis and ask me, hey, any new episodes? What's it going to take? Is the podcast coming back? So yeah, very happy to be doing this again.
Yes, the answer to that question is now, thanks to our partnership with Cincinnati Regional Tourism, which comprises Visit Cincy and Meet NKY, the convention and visitors bureaus on both sides of the Ohio River. We are back. So I wasn't sure what quote best describes our top story this week. Is it, if at first you don't succeed, try again? Or doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity? Fun fact, that quote, falsely attributed to Albert Einstein, was actually originated in Narcotics Anonymous literature and popularized by author Rita Mae Brown in her novel Sudden Death.
I did not know that.
What I'm talking about, of course, is Kroger's attempt to acquire another rival supermarket chain, Giant Eagle. The downtown-based grocery chain Giant announced July 1st that it will pay $1.65 billion for Giant Eagle, which is headquartered in suburban Pittsburgh and has 197 supermarkets in 5 states.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different than the Albertsons deal that Kroger had been chasing for a while. But nonetheless, Andy, I think if I had to pick, it would be the first quote, which is that try again. Kroger is looking to grow, and one of the ways to do that is through acquisitions, and this definitely hits the mark on helping them expand.
Yeah, you mentioned it is a little different than Albertsons. So a matter of scale, Albertsons was going to be bought for $24 billion. It's the nation's second largest traditional supermarket chain, just behind Kroger, but Albertsons had 2,200 locations compared to Kroger's 2,697. And that scale was the reason that the Albertsons deal fell apart, right? The feds and many states' attorneys generals fought it on antitrust grounds. It was a 2-year battle. The merger was first announced in October of 2022, and then it fell apart in December of 24 after 2 court rulings kind of said that there was allegedly anti-competitive. So Giant Eagle, much smaller. It's a regional player. Like I said, 197 supermarkets. It operates in northern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, and Indiana. And the only real major overlap with Kroger is in Columbus, where Kroger said it will divest stores if this goes through. Now contrast that with Albertsons, and they were ready to divest more than 500 stores, showing you just how different in scale these two acquisitions are.
Absolutely, yeah. But what it does do, Andy, as you talked about, is it gets Kroger into some new markets. This is not just adding stores where they're already operating. They're getting into Pennsylvania with this acquisition, which is big for Kroger to have a kind of a new state to move into.
And it gets them back into Cleveland. So I didn't know this until Steve Watkins wrote this story, but Kroger was in Cleveland until about 1985, and it pulled out of that market because of a union dispute, and it hasn't been back since. Now, this isn't going to be, I'm prepared to say this, and I realize just how absurd this sounds. It is not going to be huge for Kroger's bottom line because Giant Eagle only has about $9 billion in annual sales. But to be fair, Kroger's sales last year was $148 billion. So it will add to the revenue of Kroger, but not by the same amount that Albertsons might have.
Not similar to almost a merging of equals that would have been the case with Albertsons.
Now, this is the first really big move under new CEO Greg Foran. I know Watkins also reported that I don't know if this is directly attributable to him, or if some of it was started under Ron Sargent, their interim CEO and former executive chairman, but they slashed store count. They've been cutting down underperforming stores. They went below 2,700 stores for the first time in a decade, and it's been a major push to bring prices down.
Yeah, a lot of big moves coming at Kroger.
So sticking with Kroger, or at least something Kroger adjacent. Now, my experience with golf is pretty much confined to the one summer my parents sent me to golf camp as a kid. My poor parents, they tried so hard to make me athletic. If it wasn't golf camp, it was t-ball or basketball camp, or does the name Stan Kimbrough mean anything to you?
No.
I think he was I don't know if he ever played in the NBA. I think he was affiliated with Xavier University, but he had a basketball camp at the Cincinnati Sports Mall. And when I was a mere youth, my parents sent me to that camp, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be fun, I'm gonna play basketball, but no. We did suicides, which is where you run to the free throw line and back, half court and back, other free throw line and back, beneath the other hoop and back. And I think the only part of that camp I enjoyed was playing the X-Men arcade game they had in the lobby.
Very sportsy.
Yeah. Tom, you're more familiar with golf, right? I mean...
Yeah, a little bit. So I love to play golf, but I'm terrible. I'm a hacker, but I enjoy it. I started playing later. I was in college, and my future father-in-law took me out and taught me how to golf. But I love the sport. I love watching it. I love playing, even though my goal is to try to break 45 out of 9 holes.
I have no idea what that means.
It means I'm not shooting for par. Bogey golf is my goal at this point.
The women of the LPGA tournament probably put you massively to shame, and that tournament's future is in jeopardy after Kroger and P&G, our two largest companies and both on the Fortune 500, ended their 5-year sponsorship with the LPGA's Queen City Championship. Now, it was a 5-year sponsorship deal beginning in 2022 and ending now after this year's tournament, which wrapped up in May 17th. But both these companies said that they were moving on and focusing on different long-term objectives.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a bummer for me, Andy. As a golfer, I'll call myself a golfer. I'm not a golfer, but as a golfer and as a fan of the sport, I was able to go to one of the first. I think it was the first year when it was at Kenwood Country Club, and it's really incredible to watch these professionals playing at this level. And the access that you had, we were as close to some of these golfers as you and I are right now, sitting, talking. It was just a great experience. Kroger and P&G really activated the event, and they made it very fun, very family friendly. So sad to see this, it's run its course with this 5-year commitment, but maybe we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, this doesn't mean that the tournament is dead by any means, but the LPGA, when asked about it, was kind of non-committal about its future in Cincinnati. The LPGA typically requires a title sponsor for all of its events, and sometimes it'll financially back events temporarily while seeking a new sponsor. But the LPGA also hinted at scheduling changes for 2027, which didn't confirm Cincinnati's inclusion. Now, in your opinion, are there any parallels here? It's probably not as big, but with the former Western and Southern Open, which became the Cincinnati Open after it was acquired by BMO Capital.
Yeah, so I don't feel like that. It's not as big of a hit as it would have been to lose the tennis tournament, because the history with the tennis tournament has been here for so long. We've done, I think, a good job with our 5-year run with this LPGA event. So I'd love to I'd love for us to keep it here in Cincinnati. And we're such a good sports town. Cincinnati is for fans, we always hear how much professionals love to come and play in Cincinnati, whatever the sport is. So hopeful that something could come together, that maybe there's another company or two that would be interested in helping back this event.
Yeah, Western Southern doesn't have its title sponsorship of the tennis tournament anymore. So Tom, this next story kind of came out of left field this week, and tell me and pretend like this conversation isn't contrived to introduce our third news story. Do you know what a Lonza is?
I do not.
Lonza, or at least Lonza USA, is a global pharmaceutical contract development and manufacturing company, meaning they essentially handle outsourced drug development and manufacturing for other companies, and they're headquartered in Switzerland. Now, to give you a sense of scope, this is a $8 billion company. That was their sales last year. And just this week, it was announced that they landed state tax credits to build a $1 billion facility in Claremont County, which could bring with it 650 jobs. Now, it was a 20-year job creation tax credit, which is worth about $930,000 annually, and it comes with the guarantee that they're going to create these 650 jobs with $50 million in annual payroll and an average annual salary of $77,000. So these are pretty well-paying jobs for Claremont County.
Yeah, this is potentially a very big win for the east side of greater Cincinnati. And the thing about Cincinnati is we're geographically challenged, is with our beautiful rolling hills and rivers, which are great for people looking at the region. But when you're trying to find a big piece of property to put development like this, it's pretty tough. It's tough to find that much acreage in one spot. This could be a huge win for Claremont County if this comes through.
So Ohio, we weren't alone in competing for this. We were up against Texas and North Carolina and Virginia, all vying for this project, and it landed in little old Williamsburg Township, potentially.
Yeah, and again, you look at the location that they're eyeing for this, Andy, and it's right next, it's kind of catty corner to the Nestle Purina facility, which is a massive, which to that point has been one of our biggest economic development wins in the region, where they're going to hire hundreds and hundreds of people to make their products. So more coming that way.
And it's not a done deal yet. It's still subject to company due diligence and board approval. So I think that's why the state tax credit came when it did, because state and county support is kind of seen as being critical to securing this project. So Tom, do your kids use slang that you don't understand?
Yes, it makes me feel old, Andy.
Do they say 6'7"?
No, so my kids are at the point, especially my daughter, she's 6'7" is over. It's not a thing anymore, it's done. So that makes me want to do it even more just to mess with them.
Yeah, my own parents would do that. They would affect youth slang in a way that they seemed like they were earnestly trying to be in on the joke, which I understand now that they were just messing with us, because it would always infuriate us when my parents would use the slang of the 90s. I went to college, and I did the kind of experimentation that I feel like a lot of newly freed baby birds do after being pushed out of the nest, and I've got to say, I've never heard of the term Jeter used to describe as a marijuana cigarette. Have you?
No, I had never heard that term. Again, making me feel old or out of the loop.
Yeah, I've heard of joint, I've heard of spliff, I've heard of doobie, but apparently the company Jeter takes its name from that slang term for a jazz cigarette, and it is the #1 ranked pre-roll cannabis brand in America. And it's making its way to Cincinnati thanks to local company King City Gardens.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew about Jeters?
King City, they're a cannabis cultivator, and they've got 2 dispensary locations in Cincinnati and 1 coming soon in Mansfield, which is north of Columbus. So it took a whole year for them to work out this relationship with Jeter. And this relationship will have them both supplying cannabis to be used in their products, but then also selling, marketing, and distributing the company throughout the state of Ohio. So what does Jeter do? They produce infused pre-rolls, which, and this is all getting way too technical for me, I guess it's cannabis infused with rosin, kief, terpenes, and THCA. I think I understood one of those words. They supposedly have 25 to 30% of market share in every state in which they operate, and Ohio will be its 8th market. And here's the number I think is really impressive. They were number 144 on the Inc. 5000, so they are growing pretty fast.
Yeah, the 3-year growth rate, Andy, for that was over 3,300%. That is massive expansion.
So King City, and I think this is pretty telling, they expect to sell 100,000 units in week 1.
It's a lot of Jeters.
That's a lot of Jeters. So King City, they're investing $3 million to $4 million towards product. I wrote bailout, and that's not. Okay, starting over. So King City, they're investing $3 million to $4 million towards product, rollout, and royalty fees. And while they didn't disclose the financials of their deal with Jeter, it is going to create about 60 new jobs, which they predictably 100 by 2027. And that's going to bring them to more than 300 employees total for the cannabis cultivator.
Yeah, really, again, just as impressive growth for our local company here with King City Gardens.
So continuing on the topic of wayward youths, my journalism career took me from Springfield, Illinois to Columbus, Ohio to Montgomery, Alabama to Washington, D.C. And no matter where I went, I always missed the flavors of home. And that often meant loading my car with cans of Skyline chili. And then luckily when I was in D.C., I found one grocery store about 20 minutes away from me. So this was like a opportunity of passion. They sold White Castle sliders in the freezer aisle. And it was also that kind of desire for a flavor of home that inspired Don and Kat Ketting to sign a franchise deal to bring Houston-based Shipley Donuts to the region. Now, Don and Kat, they live in Houston, where Shipley is based, but their families hail from the Midwest, and Don's from Northern Kentucky. And every time they come back for the summer, they would talk about not being able to get kolaches in the Cincinnati region of the Midwest.
And that's a pastry that I have never heard of until this story, Andy.
And apparently they're huge in Texas. A kolache is a Texan twist on a Czech pastry where they have this long, doughy pastry that is filled with savory fillings like bacon, egg, and cheese, ham and cheese, sausage cheese, and jalapenos for the spice lords amongst us. And I guess you can't really get them anywhere around here. So the Kettings, they signed a 3-franchise deal with Shipley, and they're going to open first in northwestern Cincinnati. The idea is anywhere north of the Norwood area. Second, they're going to head to northern Kentucky for their NKY roots, and they're pretty open for where the third location is going to be. But they told me that ideally they like to be around businesses that attract similar customers, so think Skyline or Chick-fil-A.
So Andy, I think the thing that we've got to make sure happens with this is we've got to reach out to the Shipley folks and let them know that you've got to put Geta in one of those kolaches. That is a must for breakfast pastry.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be a Cincinnati kolache without it. It was funny, I was talking with Don Ketting for this story, and he told me that his family has this tradition where they have a cast iron grinder used to make Geta, and it gets passed to every couple as they get married. So their newlywed phase is celebrated with home-ground Geta.
That's incredible.
All right, they didn't tell me how much it costs to stand up a Shipley, but these are pretty significant investments. According to their franchisee website, it costs anywhere from $500,000 to $855,000, not including real estate costs, to build one of these. And they employ about 15 to 20 people per location. And while the Kettings have only signed a deal for 3 locations in our market, they think that the Cincinnati market can support more, and Shipley as a company is eyeing other nearby markets.
Yeah, this is exciting to have another donut option here in Greater Cincinnati. Do you have a donut? You have a go-to donut place, Andy?
So when Hannah and I lived in Norwood, Starlight Donut Factory was right down the street from us, and they do savory donuts, they do sweet donuts, they've done a chicken tikka masala donut, they've done an elote donut, they've done a Skyline chili donut, so I'm a big fan of their savory donuts, but that's kind of my go-to.
Okay, yeah. For me, I'm a huge fan of Grater's. Grater's makes a great donut. UDF, which makes their own donuts now, makes a good donut. But my go-to is, there's a little shop way on the far west side in downtown Harrison called Harrison Home Bakery. And I think they make the best donut in town.
Yeah, we are pretty spoiled for good donut options in Cincinnati.
With family-friendly attractions, vibrant neighborhoods, there's something new around every corner. The Cincy is the perfect place to spend a day, a weekend, or longer. Learn more or plan your trip at visitcincy.com.
This week on the podcast, we have Steve Leeper, CEO of the Cincinnati Center City Development Corporation, or 3CDC. And we must have manifested this, or at least I'm willing to take credit for it, because prior to this interview, which we taped last week, our politics and development reporter, Chris Wederick, said we should ask what the status of the Convention Center headquarters hotel financing is. And Steve told us during the taping that it was closing on that day. He also talked with us about the idea of completing Cincinnati's urban core and tying together these various districts around it, and whether that work will ever truly be done. This is 3CDC CEO Steve Leeper on Above the Fold. I was listening back to the first episode we did with you about 2 years ago, and you were talking about taking on the challenge of Fountain Square back in the early 2000s. Just what a night and day difference it was back then and to now. But then even since then, you guys have done even more work around solidifying that as the Fountain District.
That's correct.
And not just the square.
The two buildings that we did, I think, created that opportunity, found the Foundry and the Saks building.
Yeah. And how much of that was opportunistic versus planning and knowing what the Fountain District needed?
We knew that we needed more street level presence, and we knew we needed to solidify the area around Fountain Squares, but then the opportunity came and we took advantage of it.
I guess the decline of urban shopping centers was the benefit of Cincinnati's urban core.
Yeah, because when you really think about it, both Saks, the number of trips to those buildings in a given day is probably 100-fold more times than that. More than that.
Yeah, we used to joke that the old Macy's and what was now the Foundry was the place that I think a former employee went to get emergency pants.
We had an event that night, and she said, I need dress pants.
Okay.
Random Macy's.
Yeah,
but
it was a default.
Yeah, it was not part of your regular routine.
Cincinnati business and life. It seems that over the past several years has been a really deliberate attempt to kind of complete the core in Cincinnati. It was, for so many years, it seemed as an observer that 3CDC's mission was over the Rhine, was Fountain Square. But then since then, there's been all the work that's been done on Court Streets, connecting the Fountain District to over the Rhine, and then now OTR North, and now the Convention District. And it seems that downtown Cincinnati has more connective tissue than at any time in my memory.
I think that's an accurate depiction. The Convention Center and getting that completed. And by the way, we're closing on the Convention Center Hotel as we speak. The financing's closing. We've technically already started construction, but the financing is closing today. And creating that end of town and strengthening our hospitality sector with the new Convention Center and the Convention Center Hotel and Elm Street Plaza. And then I think we have the benefit in this city that Convention Center and district is so close to the center of the city. So you walk out as a visitor to our city and immediately you're a Flight Club or a Salazar's or a Mita's or a Vintage or a Five Iron, and then you press on to our other venues like Ruby's and the Davidson and all the establishments, and then you're at Fountain Square, and then you can walk through the passageway and you're at Boca and Soda and Nada, and all of them are local restaurateurs, which is highly unusual. We've got Prim there as well, and it's been a wonderful mix of some of our great talent in this city. Marigold is there as well, and so every one of some of our partners are represented, and it's really good to see that.
It feels very purposeful in terms of if you are coming to Cincinnati, the experience is going to be pretty uniquely Cincinnati because it's not large chain steakhouse, large chain seafood restaurant. It's our restaurateurs.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's something I think we sometimes take for granted, and it's highly unusual. And then to have those two civic spaces, and I cannot understate or overstate, for that matter, I can't overstate the value of those civic spaces, both Elm Street Plaza and Fountain Square. And then moving the skating rink over there, I think pushed a lot of traffic over in that area. And then we had Winter House on the square and the events that we have each and every night. Tonight's jazz night on the square, in case you guys want to head up over there. But I think that whole mix of having good food, beverage, entertainment, events, conventions, people moving there, I think we've been able to really animate that part of town. It's not only the uniqueness of the dining experience and the entertainment experience, but it's also the concentration of them. And so you don't necessarily need it to be a destination. You don't have to, what are you doing tonight? I'm going to go down to the Fountain District. Where are you going to go? I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there. And I used to say that was our goal 18 years ago or so, and I think we're finally getting to that point. And between that and, as you say, the sort of fledgling but very much exciting little district on Court Street, and then our over the Rhine, which we've essentially re-tenanted almost all of those spaces, both with retail and service and restaurants. We hope to nail down the former Taste of Belgium site here quickly. And so we only have one space left. So we're real excited about what's the change for Vine Street's been.
I'm curious how important it is to have that connective tissue, to have downtown Cincinnati, downtown writ large, over the Rhine, the Fountain District, Convention District, to have that be cohesive and active and activated. Because I go to a place like, and I know there's really no comparison, but like Albuquerque, and you have to drive 15 minutes to get from dots on the map. There really is no, I'm just going to walk down 4th Street and see what catches my eye.
Yeah, not only do we have the food and beverage establishments and the tightness of our districts, and as I've just mentioned earlier to you gentlemen, I was in both Denver and St. Louis recently, and they have huge boulevards, much more Midwestern or Western as you would see in the streets. Ours are so tight and dense, and Vine Street's such a tight street, and then so it's so walkable back and forth. But in addition to this concentration of the food and beverage scene, we have a concentration of our arts assets. We're very fortunate there that the Aronoff is right there, and when the Aronoff is on, man, it is a great contributor. And then of course the convention center is right there, and the civic spaces are there, and then you move into what we have in Over the Rhine in terms of music hall and Shakespeare, which is just a little machine. It just is constantly activating that space with great art. The ensemble and the No and all those establishments are really, I think, contributing to the whole vibrancy. And it's not just one thing. And our biggest challenge sometimes is that we got too much going on. We don't, on a night that there's a symphony and there's an FC game, we got to deal with it. It's all by management though, to ensure that all those customers don't get turned off, and that we also are able to properly take care of the food and beverage patrons as well.
So I think I quipped last time you were on that you're practically an honorary Cincinnatian after 18 years in the city.
22.
Now it's been 22 years, and as you said, it's really impossible to overstate the drama or the dramatic change that has occurred in the past 2 decades. How would you characterize the progress we've made in the last 2 decades? And how much farther, if farther, do we have to go?
I think we've made great progress. We can always do better, and we have our challenges. And so I don't want to sound naive about the circumstances here, but if you see what's happened across urban America post-pandemic, what we were able to do here and to strengthen our core. Right now, we have more monthly parking leases in our portfolio than we've ever had by a long shot. If you went up to our main 2,500 cars, spaces, which is at Fountain Square, Foundry, 8451 4th and Race, we probably are parking 2,600 cars there. We're stacking cars. So people are showing up. You can look out the window. That little parking garage across the street's all stacking cars over there. So people, it is showing up. This is the office building we're in right now. You can slowly but surely, it's leasing and its occupancy is growing. at a point where it is now going to be almost back to pre-pandemic stages. Our parking revenue per stall was $2,900 per stall in 2019. In 2026, it's $3,900 per stall. It's a 33% increase. And that's almost all driven. Last 3 years, we've really not even touched rates. So it's being driven by volume. So, and we see the restaurant numbers and how people are doing, and it is really a positive, I believe, a very positive statement about the community. The fact that we started the Foundry 2 months after COVID hit for office purposes, we might not be that bright, but we're lucky sometimes. And then we also, with the Saks, both those buildings we're about to sign our last lease in the Saks building, and we're fully leased in both office and commercial. In fact, our office portfolio, including the ones in over the Rhine, with the exception of the space down below us, because our friends Agar bought a building here, and we've been toying with what exactly we're going to do with that space, but that's the only office space we've left. So I think we are in a good spot, but what I will tell you that it constantly takes everybody's attention. We can't rest. We cannot rest on our laurels or on any successes that we've had. We've got to make sure that it's clean, that it's safe, that it's convenient, that it's affordable, that we're attracting events that are exciting for people. We're not getting stale, and we're constantly thinking about those kinds of things, because you can get in a rut sometimes and start to mail it in, and we can't do that as a community. As a city, we can't do that, because we are a product. People can either buy it or not. And I think right now we have folks buying it, but we got to keep selling it. And I'm not so sure we got work to do. I think we're going to make some progress, and with our friends at the Visit Cincy, where we feel like we got a strong partnership with them, and we're really starting to think to make sure that when folks do come into town, like there's a convention here right now, that the city is welcoming, that we have activities that are going to say, hey man, I was in Cincinnati for convention. I couldn't believe what I saw. And I couldn't believe what I saw in a good way. So that's the kind of thing that we need to do a better job of. We probably could have done a better job of. The Milwaukee Brewers are in town. They're relatively close by. They're a successful team right now. They're probably going to be traveling. We should make sure that we're welcoming to those folks from Wisconsin that are Milwaukee Brewers fans, and think ahead of the football schedule and make sure that we take advantage of those Detroit games or the Buffalo Bills or the Steelers or any of those teams that just travel really well. Yeah. Those are little things we could be doing, and we just got to stay on it.
Steve, going back to the idea of kind of that constantly making sure that we're being thoughtful in what we're doing. I've seen you on Fountain Square and walking around. How important is it to you to walk around the city and just check in on things, and why is that important to you?
I do it almost every day at various times. Sometimes after my workout, I'm actually working when I'm sitting at the bar at Washington Park having a beer, so I'm technically still working. But I think it's really important that you look at everything that we're doing in terms of safety, police presence, whether there's a clean and safe, and that our area is clean and welcoming, that our customer service is up to par. We have still a lot of folks in our community that from time to time we have to support those who might be suffering from mental health or drug and alcohol abuse or whatever. And both our ambassadors and our outreach workers need to be on top of it to provide that needed support. I think they've done a good job in that area. But I do think there are some steps that we as a community need to do to provide even more services than we have in the past. Although our homeless facilities in the two shelter house facilities in City Gospel Mission are very powerful and are the envy of many communities around the country, we still have some more work to do in that area.
So in the idea of not resting on our laurels, what are the next steps that you would like to see the city taking? It sounds like the Convention Center Hotel is in a good place. I know that there's a lot of discussion about the banks right now, and they're still going back to get federal money for capping Fort Washington Way, but where do you see as the big areas of opportunity in our urban core remaining?
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate that the what you would say sort of dormant areas or blighted areas are very limited in our downtown. We are so fortunate. We probably know the 6 buildings that we fall into that category, and we've probably got control over at least a third of them or something. But I think the whole, what we call CBD North, that whole area where the former Garfield Suites was located, and old Jean Robert's Table, and several surface parking lots, and we could probably think about reimagining Pyatt Park, and there's a city-owned parking facility that probably could be upgraded. So I think that area that reinforces what both of you were mentioning with sort of that connection between Fountain District and over the Rhine and Court Street. It's right there. The library has done a wonderful job in renovating its space, and I think that area needs to be our area of focus. We've gotten control of the Garfield Suites, and I think there's an interest on the part of the city to think through both the parking facilities and in the park itself. We own one of those surface parking lots, and trying to build from ground up has been a challenge. We have looked at housing, mixed-use housing development there that we're still trying to put the capital stack together, but that would be something that I think would be important. Now, there's been a lot of units that have come on recently, and we're keeping an eye on the absorption rate of those. There's a new building coming on 7th Street there. So there's 2. There's the old Macy's, and then there's the old URS, I guess that was the old URS building, which is wonderful, and it's going to be a great residential product. So we're waiting to see how those perform. I think the Garfield would be hospitality. I think it could be a different type of product. So I think those are the areas it's an opportunity to really solidify our central business district and maybe fill in a missing tooth, if you will, in our fabric. And then obviously the area north of Liberty, where we've already started big time, and our partners at the city have been wonderful, where have gone hand in hand with us. Obviously the Crossroads Health Center is completed and operating. The Findlay Community Hub, the community center there, is well on its way. It'll be done in November, and we'll open and operate it in January. And then my colleague Katie Westbrook on the development side has got 2 mixed-income, mixed-use housing projects coming south that will it'll probably have, I don't know, damn near 20 buildings that we'll be able to restore, and with an affordable component. So I think that big impact that we're going to be able to make, and we are going into what's called phase 2 of the community hub, which is the Grant Park, former Grant Park that's up there now. That's been really a troubled spot in that community, where we've seen a lot of violence, a lot of loss of life in that area, that we would like to reimagine that space and program it appropriately. So we're excited about what we have on our plate right now, and it's just putting the capital stacks together and getting them moving, but we're ready for it.
Now, is the work ever done? Is there ever a point where you can look around and say, 3CDC has set out what it's meant to do, or is it just a process of continual improvement, always iterating, always getting better?
I think it's the latter, that I think there will always be a role for a 3CDC, both in terms of development, taking on projects that might not be necessarily a profitable venture for a private developer. And then there's always public spaces, civic spaces that we can work hand in hand with the city on. I think we would love to connect with Uptown eventually. That's probably the normal thing, that we're that far up the street at McMicken at this point in time. And then I think it's management, our business improvement districts and over the Rhine and downtown, our civic spaces, our parking facilities, our commercial tenants, constantly leasing. That's just never done. And I think when you think you're done and you take your eye off the ball is when this could turn on as we saw in the pandemic, man. It turned like this, and we were struggling to get out of it, like all these communities were. So I don't necessarily, I think we just need to constantly evolve, think about our programming, think about our leasing strategy. You can't get tired, and you can't, and we never We don't follow a project for a fee. That's not what we do. That's not what our motivation is, obviously. We try to be strategic in the investments that we make and the time we spend on things.
And how much gas do you have left in the tank? Or you're not really the type to sit back on a beach and sip Mai Tais?
Yeah, no. First of all, I don't have any hobbies, but we have thought through our management and transition, and we've got a great team up there now. They're young. They're the next generation of leaders in this community. I feel good about my colleagues, and I am also one of those people that, regardless if I want to continue working, you want to pass the baton on at some point in time, and you got to make sure that you've gotten the organization financially in a good place, from a management standpoint in a good place, and I clearly believe from a management standpoint, we're as strong as we've ever been. And the colleagues that I have, and Paul has recently joined us, Paula Blogsmuthing, and of course Katie Westbrook, and Christy Samad, and Caitlin Felvis, and Tim Salacey, and Mike Dumbald, and David Visman, and the whole team is, I think, and Reed Van Pelt, who runs all of our parking and property management, which is a very tough job. We're in a good place.
As we wrap up, we get a couple of rapid fire questions we like to ask people. First, hidden gem of Cincinnati, something that people aren't paying as much attention to as you think they should.
Longfellows.
Mike is great people, and it's a fantastic bar. Yeah. Where would you go out to eat to celebrate something, and then what's your favorite spot for just like a quick business lunch?
Oh, that's not fair. I've got too many partners here about where I would go to. You know what? I think I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. I'm going to want to tell you where I want to go.
Fair enough. It's got to be like picking a favorite kid.
That is. I think our mix is great. It depends on the mood. And because I'm Italian, I like to go to some of our Italian establishments. Leave it that way. We've got a couple really good ones, both downtown and over the Rhine. So, how about I lean that way? I'll tell you the type of food that I would lean for.
Fair enough. When you have people visiting from out of town, where's the first place you take them?
Washington Park. I think that's the most important project we did. I thought didn't eliminate it, but lowered the level of skepticism about our organization. I think if you go up to that space on any given night, the mix of folks that are there makes you proud to be from Cincinnati. I just think it's a great space. So I think that one, and I like all of our spaces, but the new Elm Street Plaza is great too. It is going to be, I think it's a new, but I think still a lot of people don't even know about it. So when they get there, they're just, everybody that has been there has been just blown away by its beauty, and it's got a good beer selection.
Excellent. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, as always, fellas, thanks for having me.
Above the Fold is a podcast by the Cincinnati Business Courier, presented by Cincinnati Regional Tourism. The podcast is produced by me, Andy Brownfield, and hosted by me and Tom Demeropoulos. Alexa Wesselman edits the podcast, and our theme music was written and performed by Dylan McCartney. Come back next week for another episode of Above the Fold.